I spent 8 years caring for my mother-in-law. From bathing her to holding her hand through her pain, she promised to leave me everything. But after the funeral, the will only gave me $10,000, while the entire multi-million-dollar fortune went to my husband and his brother. It was a fake will, and I will prove it even if it means confronting them. Welcome to Stories of Auntie Maya. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Drop a comment down below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you, right? Now, I read every single comment and it helps me to know I'm not alone in this. My name is Lyra. I'm 52 years old, and for the last 8 years I've lived here at the Lighthouse Manor on the rugged coast, taking care of my mother-in-law Genevieve. She was a painter, truly gifted, the kind whose work hangs in galleries and makes strangers stop and stare. But to me, she was so much more than that. She became my mother, my closest friend, the person who understood me when no one else seemed to. I married her son Ethan 22 years ago. We have one child together, our son Orion, who's 19 now and trying to find his own way in the world. Ethan and I, well, we started out in love, the way most couples do, but over time, things changed. He grew distant, more focused on work and money than on the little things that hold a family together. His sister, Alara, has always been close to him, closer than I ever felt I could get. The two of them share that blood tie, and sometimes I've felt like an outsider looking in. When Genevieve got sick, I was the one who stayed. I gave up my part-time job at the local library, moved into the manor full-time, and cared for her every single day. I bathed her, fed her, read to her, sat with her through the long nights when the pain was too much. I held her hand when she cried, and I listened for hours while she told me stories about every painting on these walls. She taught me how to see light in a canvas, how to mix colors until they sang. And in those quiet moments, she promised me more than once that she would make sure I was taken care of, that the legacy she built would be protected. But the day after her funeral, everything I thought I knew started to fall apart. The lawyer gathered us in the living room to read the will. He started calmly. To my daughter Alara, I leave the entire lighthouse estate, the house, the land, and my complete art collection worth millions. Alara let out a small, satisfied breath. To my son Ethan, $200,000. Then he turned to me. To my daughter-in-law, Lyra? At that exact second, a single drop of bright blue ink fell from nowhere and landed on the page, right over my name. The lawyer frowned, wiped it, and kept reading. I leave $10,000. The room froze. $10,000 after everything I had given. I stayed calm on the outside, but inside I knew this was not Genevieve's real will. That blue ink was the exact shade she used in her paintings, and it appeared too perfectly, like a message from her. Ethan wouldn't look at me. Alara crossed her arms, hiding a small smile. In that moment I understood someone had forged the will to take everything for themselves. I'm a quiet woman. I don't like fights. But I loved Genevieve too much to let greed destroy what she spent her life building. So I made a promise to myself, right there in that room, I would find the truth, no matter what it cost me. After the lawyer left, the atmosphere in the Lighthouse Manor grew thick with suspicion. The blue ink drop on the will was not an accident. It was a signal. I quietly slipped away from the living room, walking through the hallways carrying the memories of 8 years spent caring for Genevieve, my feet automatically leading me to her studio. The room remained unchanged, still smelling of turpentine and chamomile tea. On the easel in the center of the room stood the unfinished painting of a stormy sea. The final work, she had said, needed time to reveal itself. I stepped closer, observing the vibrant streaks of cobalt blue. As I traced the wooden frame of the painting with my hand, I felt something unusual. In the lower right corner of the frame, right beneath the canvas, a small piece of paper or something firm was cleverly concealed in the gap between the frame and the painting. A fingerprint, clear as day in the thin layer of dust that had settled since she last touched it. But it wasn't hers. Genevieve's fingers were small and delicate, even before the illness thinned them. This print was larger, broader, the ridge pattern thicker. A man's print, or at least someone with stronger hands than hers. My heart started beating faster. No one was supposed to come in here after she got too sick to paint. I'd kept the room just as she left it, dusting lightly but never letting anyone else inside. Ethan barely stepped foot in the studio. Alara hadn't visited in months. Orion respected it too much to touch anything. I leaned in closer, my breath catching. The print was fresh enough that the dust hadn't filled it in completely. Someone had been here recently. Someone had touched her last painting. I pulled my hand back like I'd been burned. The house suddenly felt different, colder, like eyes were watching from the shadows. That perfect family picture we'd all been pretending to live in. It was cracking right in front of me, and a stranger had touched the one thing Genevieve left unfinished. I stood there for a long time staring at that fingerprint, questions flooding my mind. 2 signs in one day, 2 messages that something was terribly wrong. The wind picked up outside, rattling the studio windows. I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling the chill seep in. Down the hall, I heard Ethan's voice, low and clipped, talking to someone, probably Alara. Planning, celebrating, I didn't know anymore. I looked back at the painting. Genevieve had always said her art held secrets if you knew how to look. The truth is in the layers, Lyra, she'd whisper when we worked side by side. You have to peel them back gently. Maybe that's what she wanted me to do now. Peel back the layers of this lie they'd wrapped around her legacy. I took a slow breath and straightened my shoulders. I wasn't going to let them win. Not Ethan with his cold distance. Not Alara with her sharp smiles. They thought $10,000 would send me quietly on my way. They were wrong. I turned off the studio light and closed the door softly behind me. The fingerprint stayed burned in my mind as I walked back through the quiet halls. This house held more than memories now. It held secrets, and I was going to find them. I left the studio with my heart racing, that strange fingerprint burning in my mind like a warning. The house felt too quiet as I came down the stairs, the late afternoon light turning everything golden but cold. This seemingly perfect family picture was cracking wider now, and a stranger had touched it. Lyra is not just fighting for herself. The conflict is about to spread. Protecting the legacy is the real war. I needed air, or maybe just to move, so I headed toward the kitchen at the back of the house, the one that overlooked the cliff path down to the sea. The smell of coffee still hung around from breakfast, mixed with the salt coming through the open window. Ethan was there, standing by the counter with a mug in his hand, staring out at the waves like he owned them already. He'd taken off his suit jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and looked more relaxed than he had in the drawing room. I stopped in the doorway, watching him for a moment. We'd been married 28 years, but right then he felt like someone I barely knew. He heard me and turned, his face tightening just a little. "You okay?" he asked. But it sounded more like something he felt he should say than something he cared about. I walked in and leaned against the island counter, folding my arms. "No, Ethan, I'm not okay. It doesn't feel right. Your mother talked to me so many times about what she wanted. She wouldn't have left everything to Alara and $10,000 to me after all these years." He set his mug down harder than necessary, the ceramic clinking against the marble. "Lyra, let it go. Mother changed her mind. People do that. She was sick for a long time. Maybe she decided blood should come first in the end." "Blood?" I repeated quietly. "Is that what this is about? Because I wasn't born into this family, I don't count?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair the way he did when he was impatient. "That's not what I said. But come on, you took care of her, yes. We're all grateful. But what you really want is the assets, not gratitude. Blood is thicker than water. Alara's her daughter. It makes sense she'd leave the estate to her." The words hit me like a slap, cold and sharp. I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't look away. "Grateful," I said. "You think $10,000 shows gratitude? I was here every single day, Ethan. Doctors, medicines, nights she couldn't sleep. Where were you? On business trips. Where was Alara? Visiting once a month if we were lucky. And now you stand there talking about blood like it excuses everything." He shrugged, turning back to the window. "It's not personal. It's just the way it is. The estate stays in the family. Real family." I stepped closer, my voice steady even though everything inside me was shaking. Genevieve built this place with her own hands. Every painting, every piece she collected, she poured her life into it. It wasn't about money for her. It was about art, about leaving something beautiful behind. And you're already thinking about what it's worth, aren't you? You and Alara. He didn't answer right away, just sipped his coffee. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the panes. A gull cried somewhere over the water. I waited, watching the side of his face, the way his jaw tightened. Finally, he said, "We all have to be practical, Lyra. The upkeep on this place is enormous. Taxes alone." "Practical," I cut in. "That's what you call it? Selling off her life's work piece by piece so you can be comfortable?" He turned then, eyes narrowing. "You act like you're the only one who loved her. She was my mother, and she was the only real mother I ever had," I said softly. The words surprised even me, but they were true. My own parents gone too young, and Genevieve had welcomed me, taught me, trusted me. I felt tears prick at my eyes, but I blinked them back. "I'm not going to stand by and watch you two turn this house into a transaction." Ethan put his mug in the sink, the water running loud for a second as he rinsed it. "There's nothing to watch. The will was clear. It's done." I moved to the window, looking out at the gray ocean stretching forever. The lighthouse stood tall on the point, its beam already starting to sweep as dusk crept in. Genevieve used to say that light was a promise, guiding ships home no matter how dark the night. I pressed my hand to the cool glass. "No," I said, my voice firm now. "I will never let greed swallow what Genevieve built." He didn't respond, just walked past me out of the kitchen, his footsteps fading down the hall. I stayed there a long time, watching the waves crash against the rocks below, feeling the fight settle deep in my chest. Lyra is not just fighting for herself. The conflict is about to spread. Protecting the legacy is the real war. After I told Ethan in the kitchen that morning, "I will never let greed swallow what Genevieve built," the words settled between us like a wall neither of us would cross. He left without answering, and I stood there alone with my cooling coffee, knowing the fight wasn't just mine anymore. It was spreading, touching every corner of this house, every person in it. Protecting her legacy had become the real war, and the next shot was coming soon. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. I tidied rooms I'd already tidied, wiped counters that were already clean, anything to keep my hands busy while my mind turned over the strange fingerprint, the ink drop, Ethan's coldness. By early afternoon, the fog had burned off, leaving a pale winter sun that made the sea look almost silver. I decided to go to the library to find a book, something, anything, to quiet the noise in my head. As I walked down the long hallway, I heard Alara's voice coming from the small study next to the library. The door was not quite closed, just cracked enough for sound to slip through. She was speaking low and fast, the way people do when they think they're alone. "Yes, start with the 3 smaller seascapes," she said. "Quickly handle the shipment. I want them crated tonight and picked up tomorrow. Use the back drive so no one sees the truck. Tell him the usual rate, cash when it's loaded. Make sure the labels say decorative prints, low value, nothing that raises flags." My breath stopped. Smaller seascapes. Those were Genevieve's early works, the ones she'd painted right here overlooking the coast. They were worth hundreds of thousands each, and Alara was arranging to ship them out in secret, less than 48 hours after the will was read. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding so hard I was sure she'd hear it. Footsteps inside, she was moving toward the door. I took one silent step back just as the door swung open. Alara froze when she saw me. Her phone was still at her ear, but her thumb moved fast, ending the call with a sharp press. No goodbye to whoever was on the line. The screen went dark, and she slipped the phone into her pocket in one smooth motion. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. The hallway felt narrower, the air thicker. "Lyra," she said finally. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. "I thought you were upstairs." "I was coming to the library," I answered. I kept my tone even, though everything inside me was shaking. She gave a small nod, the kind that wasn't a nod at all. As she stepped past me, her hand brushed the edge of her coat, and the afternoon light caught the gold ring on her finger, the one Genevieve had given her years ago. I remembered the day clearly. Genevieve, still strong enough to smile wide, sliding it onto Alara's hand. "For my girl who sees the world the way I do," she'd said. Inside the band was engraved a tiny, perfect V. Now that ring glinted as Alara walked away without another word, her heels echoing down the hall. The front door opened and closed. A minute later, her car started and disappeared down the drive. I stood there long after the sound faded. Someone was hiding something about the art collection, and that person was trying to dispose of it secretly, fast, quiet, and irreversible. I finally moved, climbing the stairs slowly. My legs felt heavy, like I was carrying something much bigger than myself. When I reached my room, I closed the door and leaned against it, trying to steady my breathing. The house felt different now. Every painting on the walls seemed suddenly fragile, like they could vanish overnight. I thought about the fingerprint on the unfinished canvas, the blue ink drop on the will, Ethan's words about blood. It was all part of the same plan: push me out with $10,000, then strip the place bare before anyone could object. I sat on the bed, hands clasped tight in my lap. Tomorrow. That's what she'd said. The truck would come tomorrow. That evening, Orion came home, bringing cold air and the smell of salt with him. We ate soup I'd heated up, sitting at the kitchen table. He talked about his classes, but I only half listened. My mind kept hearing Alara's voice. Cash when it's loaded. After dinner, he went upstairs to study. I stayed in the living room with the lights low, staring at the dark windows. The lighthouse beam swept across the water every few seconds, steady and sure. Genevieve used to say that light was her favorite model, always moving, never the same twice. Around midnight, I went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. I lay listening to the house settle, the old wood creaking, the distant crash of waves. At some point, I drifted off because I woke to the soft chime of the front doorbell. I pulled on my robe and went downstairs. The porch was empty, the night cold and clear. On the mat sat a small brown package. Plain paper. My name typed on a label. No postage marks. I picked it up and carried it upstairs, locked my door, sat at the desk and turned on the lamp. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside was Genevieve's old leather notebook, the one she'd kept on her nightstand, full of sketches, riddles, color notes. I knew every page. But now, on the very first page, in her shaky, late handwriting, was a line I had never seen. Do not trust the will they read. An arrow pointed to the next page, where symbols and numbers began, references to her paintings, dates, little drawings that looked like a map. This was just the beginning. A treasure hunt game awaited me, the one she'd prepared for exactly this moment. I closed the cover gently and looked toward Orion's room down the hall. I could wake him, show him everything. Instead, I set the notebook on the table and walked to the window. The moon hung low over the sea, silver on black waves. The choice wasn't decided yet. Take this to the lawyer first thing tomorrow, or follow the clues myself. But I knew the wrong path could bring chaos, and it might cost me the trust of the one person in this house who still believed in me, my son. I slipped back into the house through the side door, my coat damp from the mist rolling in off the sea. Someone is hiding something about the art collection, and that person is trying to dispose of it secretly. Lyra knows this is just the beginning. A treasure hunt game awaits her. The hallway was dim, only the small sconce lights glowing. I climbed the stairs quietly, avoiding the creaky third step. My room was at the end, next to Genevieve's old bedroom. I turned the knob slowly and pushed the door open. The bedside lamp was still on from this morning. Everything looked the same, except for one thing. A small brown package sat in the middle of my bed. Plain paper, no stamps, no address. Just my name written across the top in black ink. The handwriting wasn't familiar. I closed the door and locked it. My heart beat faster as I walked over and picked it up. It was light and soft. I untied the twine and unfolded the paper. Inside was a leather notebook, old, worn at the corners, the kind Genevieve used to carry in her apron pocket when she walked the grounds sketching. I knew it right away. She had filled dozens like this over the years, but this one looked special. The cover had a faint scent of her lavender hand cream. I sat down and opened it. The first pages were full of quick drawings, waves crashing against the rocks, the lighthouse beam cutting through fog, small boats on the horizon. Between the sketches were lines of writing, not regular notes, short sentences that sounded like riddles. The beam shows the way, but the shadow keeps the secret. Count the steps where the light turns twice. Strange symbols dotted the margins, little arrows, keys, circles with lines through them. I turned the pages carefully. Some had numbers next to certain paintings in the house. The big seascape in the dining room had 7 to 3 written beside it. The portrait of Genevieve as a young woman in the hallway had a tiny star. It looked like a map, a guide to something hidden. I kept going, faster now. Toward the back, the writing changed. It was shakier, like it was done in a hurry. The sketches stopped. Blank pages, then one with just a few lines in the center. I leaned closer to read it. Do not trust the will they read. It was Genevieve's handwriting. No question. The way she looped her Y's, the slant of her T's. My breath stopped. She had written this knowing someone would fake her wishes. She had left proof, and she had left it for me. I closed the notebook and held it against my chest. The room felt colder. Downstairs, I heard a door close, footsteps on the hardwood, Ethan or Alara moving around. They thought they had won today. They thought the house and the paintings were already theirs to sell. But Genevieve had planned ahead. This notebook was the start. A path through the house, through her art, to whatever she had really wanted. I looked at the first riddle again. Begin where the sunset meets the sea. That was the unfinished painting in her studio, the one with the strange fingerprint on the frame. I stood up and slid the notebook into the drawer of my nightstand, under some scarves. Tomorrow I would go to the studio. Tomorrow I would start following the clues. The house settled around me. The wind rattled the windows. I turned off the lamp and sat in the dark, the notebook's weight still in my mind. I didn't sleep much that night. The notebook stayed hidden in the drawer, but its words kept running through my head. Lyra knows this is just the beginning. A treasure hunt game awaits her. The wrong choice will not only create chaos, but also strain Lyra's relationship with Orion. Morning came gray and windy. The sea roared louder than usual, waves slamming against the rocks below the cliff. I got dressed quietly and went downstairs. The house was still asleep. I made coffee in the kitchen, the pot gurgling in the silence. Then I carried the notebook, wrapped in a scarf, down to the small breakfast room that overlooked the garden. No one used it much anymore. It felt safe. I sat at the round table and opened the notebook again. The riddles stared back at me. The symbols. The note warning not to trust the will. Part of me wanted to pick up the phone right then and call Mr. Hargrove, the lawyer. Hand it over. Let him handle it officially. He had read the will yesterday. He would know what to do with proof that it was wrong. It would be clean, legal, over fast. But another part stopped me. Genevieve had written, do not trust the will they read. She didn't say, trust the lawyer. What if Mr. Hargrove was part of it? He had looked surprised by the blue ink drop, but maybe that was an act. Ethan and Alara had been close to him during the reading. Too close. And Alara was already arranging to ship paintings out. If I gave the notebook to the lawyer too soon, they might find a way to bury it, or say it was fake, or move everything before the truth came out. I turned the pages slowly. The clues pointed to places inside the house, the unfinished painting, the East Gallery, the lighthouse itself. Genevieve wanted someone to follow them, someone she trusted completely. That was me. She had left the path for me to walk alone first, to protect what she built, but alone felt heavy. I needed help reading the symbols. I needed someone to watch my back while Ethan and Alara prowled the house planning their next move. Footsteps came down the hall, soft ones. Orion appeared in the doorway, hair tousled, wearing an old sweater. He looked like he hadn't slept much either. Morning, he said quietly. He poured himself coffee and sat across from me. I hesitated, then slid the notebook out from the scarf and placed it on the table between us. His eyes widened. Is that? Grandma's, I finished. It came in a package on my bed last night. No name. He reached out and opened it carefully. He turned a few pages, stopped at the riddles, then found the warning about the will. His jaw tightened. She knew, he whispered. She knew they would fake it. I nodded. There's a trail of clues here. Through her paintings, through the house. I think it leads to the real will, or to proof. Orion looked up at me. So we follow it. I took a slow breath. I don't know yet. I keep thinking I should take this straight to Mr. Hargrove. Let the law handle it. It would be safer. Official. He frowned. But Grandma wrote not to trust the will they read. What if the lawyer helped make that one? That's what scares me, I said. If I hand it over and he's with them, everything could disappear. The paintings could be gone by next week. We'd have nothing. Orion leaned back, staring at the notebook. If we do it ourselves, we keep control. We find whatever she hid, no one else knows. But it's risky, I said. If Ethan or Alara find out we're searching, they'll stop us. They might even say we made it all up, and I paused, looking at him. It might put distance between us if something goes wrong. I don't want that. He met my eyes. Mom, I'm already on your side. I saw how Dad and Analara acted yesterday. I'm not blind. We sat in silence. The wind rattled the windows. Coffee cooled in our cups. I traced the edge of the notebook with my finger. Give it away and maybe lose everything. Keep it and maybe lose my son's trust if I drag him into danger. I thought of Genevieve's voice in my head. Protect it, Lyra, promise me. I looked at Orion again. He waited, patient. I wanted to tell him yes, we would do it together. Or no, we would go to the lawyer today. But the words wouldn't come. The choice felt too big for this quiet morning. Finally, I closed the notebook and stood up. I need to think a little more, I said. I put the notebook down on the table and walked out to do something else. The choice still undecided. I walked out of the breakfast room and left the notebook on the table. The wrong choice will not only create chaos, but also strain Lyra's relationship with Orion. Lyra realizes there's not only greed inside, there's also suspicion from her own son, which is worse than she thought. I spent the rest of the morning moving through the house like a ghost. I dusted shelves in the library that didn't need dusting. I rearranged linens in the closet. I even went outside and pulled a few weeds from the flower beds near the cliff path. Anything to keep my hands busy while my mind turned over the decision. The wind was cold, whipping my hair across my face. The sea looked angry, white caps everywhere. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Genevieve's handwriting. Do not trust the will they read. She had trusted me to fix this, not a lawyer, not Ethan or Alara, me. By midday, I knew what I had to do. Going to Mr. Hargrove felt too risky. If he was honest, fine. But if he wasn't, the notebook would vanish, and so would any chance to save the collection. Alara was already arranging shipments. Time was short. I had to follow the clues myself. Keep it secret. Protect Genevieve's legacy the way she wanted. I made a quick sandwich in the kitchen but didn't taste it. Ethan was out somewhere, probably on a call. Alara's car was gone from the drive. The house felt empty. Good. I slipped upstairs, got the notebook from the breakfast room, and tucked it under my arm. Then I walked down the long corridor to Genevieve's old bedroom. No one had been in there since the funeral. The door was closed, the air inside probably still carrying her lavender scent. I stopped in front of the door. My hand rested on the knob. This was the real start. Once I opened this door and began searching, there was no turning back. I took a deep breath, turned the knob, and pushed open the heavy door. The room looked exactly as she'd left it. The bed was made, covers smooth. Her nightgown still folded on the chair. The big windows overlooked the sea, curtains half drawn against the gray light. Her easel stood in the corner with the unfinished painting, the sunset over the water. The rocks only sketched in. The fingerprint I'd noticed yesterday was still there on the frame, clear in the daylight. But something was wrong. Someone was already here. Orion stood in front of the easel, holding the unfinished painting in both hands. He had lifted it down from the stand. He turned when the door creaked, his face surprised, eyes wide. He looked puzzled, like he'd been caught but didn't know why it mattered. "Mom?" he said quietly. I stood frozen in the doorway, the notebook pressed against my side. My son, in here, holding the painting, the one place I thought I'd be alone to start. I realizes there's not only greed inside, there's also suspicion from own son, which is worse than she thought. I stood in the doorway staring at Orion holding the unfinished painting. I realized that inside there wasn't just greed, there was also suspicion from her own son, which was worse than she imagined. I felt comforted. But she knew that the crucial piece of information about Ethan and Alara's true intentions was still being concealed. "What are you doing in here?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. Orion put the painting back on the easel quickly. I couldn't sleep last night. I kept thinking about Grandma's will. It didn't feel right. I came to look at her last painting. That's all. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The click sounded loud in the quiet room. I pulled the notebook from under my sweater and held it up. This came yesterday. Anonymous package on my bed. It's hers. Riddles, symbols. A note saying not to trust the will they read. Orion's eyes went to the notebook. She left clues? Yes, and the first one points to this painting. I walked over and lifted it down myself this time. I turned it over, checked the frame, the back of the canvas. Nothing obvious. I set it on the bed and opened the notebook to the page with the sketch of the sunset. It says, "Begin where the light meets the shadow." Orion moved closer. "So we look for something hidden in the painting?" I nodded. We examined it together. I ran my fingers along the frame again, feeling that strange fingerprint in the paint. Orion tilted the canvas toward the window light. Then he pointed. "Look, there's a tiny mark on the lower corner, like a scratch. It was small, a thin line carved into the wood, almost hidden." I leaned in. Next to it, etched lightly, was a symbol from the notebook, a small key with an arrow pointing left. "That's it," I whispered. "The first marker." Orion looked relieved. "I wasn't snooping, Mom, I swear. I don't trust Dad and Aunt Alara anymore." I set the painting down and faced him. "Why? What have you seen?" He hesitated, then sat on the edge of Genevieve's bed. 2 nights before Grandma died, I came back late. I heard noises in the study. The door was cracked open. Dad and Aunt Alara were at Grandma's desk. She has that personal safe built into the wall behind the big landscape painting. They had the key out, the one she kept in her jewelry box. Alara was pressing it into some soft clay, making a copy. My stomach tightened. They were copying the key to her safe? Orion nodded. They didn't see me. I stood in the hall and watched. Dad said something about getting access before the lawyer seals everything. Alara said they needed to move fast once the will was read. I backed away and went upstairs. I sat beside him, the safe. Genevieve kept important papers there. Deeds. Certificates for the most valuable pieces in the collection. Insurance documents. If they had a copy of the key, they could empty it any time. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked. He looked down at his hands. I didn't want to believe it. Dad's my father. But after the will yesterday, and Aunt Alara smiling like she won something, I knew they planned it all along. I put my hand on his arm. "Thank you for telling me now." He met my eyes. "There's more. I followed them yesterday after the reading. They went to the study again. I heard Dad say the safe had old contracts, things that could cause trouble if anyone found them. Alara laughed and said once they had copies of everything, they could sell quietly. I felt a chill. Contracts. Maybe proof of earlier attempts to sell pieces Genevieve had stopped. Orion took a breath. "I took the original key from Grandma's jewelry box last night and hid it. That's why I came here early. I wanted to see if this painting had anything to do with the safe." I looked at him surprised. "You took the key?" "Yeah, it's in my room, under the floorboard." We sat quiet for a minute. The wind rattled the windows. Somewhere downstairs, a clock chimed. "I thought maybe you'd be mad," he said, "that I went behind your back." I shook my head. "I'm glad you did." He gave a small smile. Then his face turned serious again. "I took it because I feared the assets would be lost, not because I was afraid of upsetting his mother. I feel comforted. But she knows the crucial piece of information about Ethan and Alara's true intention is still concealed." I looked at Orion after he finished talking about the key. Lyra feels comforted, but she knows the crucial piece of information about Ethan and Alara's true intention is still concealed. The feeling of being watched is strong. Someone is pulling the strings from behind the scenes, and they are waiting for Lyra to complete the game. "We can't waste time," I said. "Let's start with the clues now." Orion nodded. We locked Genevieve's bedroom door and spread the notebook on her small desk by the window. The first page had the sketch of the unfinished painting and the riddle, "Begin where the light meets the shadow." We already found the tiny key symbol carved on the frame. Next to it in the notebook was a number, 4 to 2. "That means 4 steps in one direction, 2 in another," Orion said. We stood in front of the painting again. I faced it like Genevieve would have, looking out toward the sea. Light from the window hits the canvas here, I said, pointing to the right side. We took 4 steps right along the wall, then 2 steps forward toward the bookshelf. Orion reached up and pulled out a thick book on coastal landscapes. Behind it, taped to the shelf, was a folded note in Genevieve's handwriting. They tried once before, checked the blue wave. We knew the painting she meant, the large blue wave in the dining room downstairs. We left the bedroom quietly, notebook tucked away, and went down the main stairs. The house was still empty. We walked into the dining room. The big seascape hung over the sideboard, waves crashing in deep blues and whites. We lifted it down carefully. On the back of the canvas, tucked into the stretcher, was another slip of paper. Genevieve had written, "Ethan and Alara came to me 2 years ago with papers. Wanted to sell 3 pieces for family expenses. I said no. They were angry. Copies of their proposal are hidden where the ships rest." "The ships," Orion said. "The model ships in the study." We hurried to the study. Genevieve's collection of antique ship models lined the top shelf. We checked each one. Inside the third, a tall sailing ship, was a small envelope. Inside were handwritten notes from Genevieve. Dates. Names of paintings Ethan and Alara had suggested selling. How much money they wanted. She had written, "Refused," in big letters across the page. And below, "They will try again. Follow the light to the truth." The next clue pointed to the lighthouse painting in the hallway. We followed it there. Behind that frame was another note leading to the portrait of Genevieve in the living room. Each time we found a new slip, a new riddle sending us to another artwork. By late afternoon, we had collected 6 notes. All of them mentioned Ethan and Alara pushing to sell parts of the collection over the years. Genevieve had always stopped them. She wrote how they argued, how they said the upkeep was too much, how the money could help the family. But she refused every time. We sat on the living room floor with the notes spread out. "This is proof they wanted the art for money," Orion said, "not for keeping it." I nodded. It shows motive for the fake will. The last clue said, "Where the beam guards the house, look low." "That's the lighthouse itself," I said, "outside." We waited until dusk. The cars were still gone. We slipped out the side door and walked the path to the old lighthouse tower attached to the manor. Inside the base room, under the spiral stairs, was a loose stone. Orion pulled it out. Behind it was a plastic sleeve with papers. We took it back inside to the study and opened it under the lamp. On top was a torn sheet, half a preliminary auction contract. It listed 5 of Genevieve's most valuable paintings, with prices and a signature line for her. The paper was ripped right across the bottom. No date, no full names. Just Ethan's initials in one corner. "Is this real?" Orion asked. "Did Grandma sign it once and tear it up? Or did they make this to trick us?" I stared at the torn edge. It looked old but clean. No dust. Placed there recently? They find a torn preliminary auction contract, but they don't know if it's real or just a trap set by Alara. The feeling of being watched is strong. Someone is pulling the strings from behind the scenes, and they are waiting for me to complete the game. I stared at the torn auction contract under the study lamp. The feeling of being watched is strong. Someone is pulling the strings from behind the scenes, and they are waiting for me to complete the game. I feel everything is going right, but the remaining truth will shatter her entire family in an unexpected way. Orion picked up the ripped paper carefully. "We can't trust this yet," he said. "It could be bait. But the next clue is on the back." I turned it over. In Genevieve's small handwriting, "When the beam falls silent, descend where the light is born." We both knew what that meant. The lighthouse tower. The actual beam was automated now, no keeper, but the original cellar beneath it, where the old oil stores and mechanisms were, hadn't been opened in years. Genevieve used to call it "where the light is born" because the lenses were assembled there long. "Ago. We go tonight," I said, "after dinner when Ethan and Alara are watching television." Orion nodded. We hid the notes and the torn contract in his room, under the floorboard with the safe key. Then we went downstairs separately, acting normal. Ethan came home first, carrying takeout bags. Alara arrived later, phone in hand. Dinner was quiet. No one talked about the will. They smiled too much. After the dishes, Ethan and Alara settled in the living room with the news on loud. Orion pretended to go to his room to study. I waited 10 minutes, then slipped out the kitchen door with a flashlight and the notebook. The path to the lighthouse was dark, wind pushing hard from the sea. Orion joined me halfway. We didn't speak. At the base of the tower, the old iron door was locked. But Genevieve had shown me the spare key years ago, hidden under a specific rock. I found it. The door groaned open. Inside smelled of salt and rust. We went down narrow stone steps, flashlight beam bouncing off walls. At the bottom was the old cellar room, low ceiling, thick beams. In the far corner, behind stacked crates, was a modern deposit box bolted to the floor. Steel. Combination lock. I stepped forward, holding the notebook while Orion shone the light to examine the final page. It was a sequence of numbers, 8-14-22-5. Initially, I suspected these were dates, but I quickly realized they corresponded to the letters HNVE. I tried arranging them according to Genevieve's name, but they didn't match. Finally, instead of using her birth year of 1947 as she often mentioned, I decided to input the year she purchased the manor, 1978. A click sounded. The lock had been successfully opened. Inside was a sealed envelope and a smaller metal box. I took the envelope first. Heavy paper, Genevieve's seal on the back. I opened it carefully. Inside was the real will, notarized, dated 6 months ago. It named me as sole heir to the estate and the entire art collection. My hands shook. "This is it," I whispered. "The real one." Orion leaned closer, eyes wide. "We did it." I scanned the pages quickly. Everything clear. I was the heir. The house, the land, the paintings, all mine to protect as Genevieve wished. But there, on the last page, a separate clause. My breath caught. If any dispute arose over the will, the entire estate must go to a public art fund. No private ownership. I closed the envelope fast. I didn't read it aloud, not yet. We locked the box again, left everything inside except the will envelope, which I tucked under my sweater. We climbed back up, locked the iron door, and walked to the house in silence. Back in his room, I handed Orion the envelope to hold. "I found something that can change everything," I said. I didn't mention it was the will. He looked at me, waiting for more. I just nodded. "Tomorrow we plan the next step. Everything is going right, but the remaining truth will shatter her entire family in an unexpected way." I hid the real will in Orion's room that night, under the same floorboard as the safe key. Lyra feels everything is going right, but the remaining truth will shatter my entire family in an unexpected way. The next morning started normal. Too normal. Ethan made coffee and asked if I wanted a cup. Alara came down in her silk robe, smiling like nothing was wrong. Orion stayed upstairs. I kept quiet, watching them. They watched me back. After breakfast, Ethan went to his study. Alara took a long call on the terrace. I heard her voice rise once, then drop low. Orion came down and whispered, "They know we've been moving around the house." Dad asked me last night why the lighthouse path looked walked on. We stayed careful all day. I read in the living room. Orion pretended to study. But the air felt thick, like a storm waiting. Late afternoon, the doorbell rang. A delivery man handed Ethan a thick envelope. He signed, closed the door, and opened it right in the hall. Alara joined him. They read together, faces calm. Then Ethan looked up at me. "Lyra," he called, "come here." I walked over slowly. He held out papers. Legal papers, a lawsuit. Filed that morning in county court, Ethan and Alara versus me. The claim, I had abused Genevieve in her final months. Neglect, financial exploitation, emotional cruelty. They wanted me removed from the estate immediately, pending investigation. My name was all over it. Accusations I had withheld medicine, taken money from her accounts, isolated her from family. I looked at Ethan. "This is a lie." He shrugged. "It's our word now, and we have proof." He tapped a page. Affidavits. Signatures from 2 nurses who had come only a few times. Dates when I was supposedly cruel. Receipts they claimed I forged. Alara smiled small. We had to protect Mother's memory. That evening, the local news website posted the story. Family dispute over Lighthouse Manor estate turns ugly. Daughter-in-law accused of elder abuse. A photo of the house, my name. Quotes from Mr. Hargrove saying he was shocked and would cooperate with any investigation. By night, it was on bigger sites. Comments poured in. People I didn't know calling me names. The phone rang twice, reporters. I let it go to voicemail. Orion found me in the kitchen, staring at my laptop screen. "They planned this," he said. "While we were searching." I nodded. "They saw us moving paintings, checking frames. They knew we were looking for something, so they struck first. The lawsuit demanded I leave the manor within 72 hours or face eviction. Their ultimate goal, forcing me out, was close but not complete. I still lived here. I still had the real Will hidden." I closed the laptop. "They think this will scare me away, make me too ashamed to fight." Orion sat beside me. "What do we do?" "We wait," I said. "We show the real Will soon, but carefully." He looked worried. "People believe the news. Friends will stop calling. Staff might quit." I knew he was right. The accusations would spread. Neighbors would whisper. Old friends would pull back. Isolation was coming fast. The lawsuit is announced in the press, but their ultimate goal is not yet achieved. I know their next blow will be fatal, potentially isolating me completely. Someone is making a sudden reversal. Genevieve's lawyer has betrayed me. The lawsuit hung over the house like fog off the sea. Phones buzzed with notifications. Emails from reporters. I stayed in my room most of the day, rereading the real Will Orion and I had found in the deposit box. It named me heir to everything, the manor, the land, the art collection worth millions. But the public clause was there in black ink. If disputed, all goes to a public fund. No one keeps it private. I hadn't told Orion the full truth yet, just that it changed everything. Ethan knocked on my door around noon. "Lyra, we need to talk." I opened it. He stood there with Alara behind him, both holding copies of the lawsuit papers. "You have until tomorrow to leave," Ethan said flatly, "or we enforce the court order." I crossed my arms. "This is fake, you know it." Alara stepped forward. "The nurse's statements are real. You were alone with Mother too much. People saw." I shut the door in their faces. My hands shook. Isolation was starting. The staff had left early. Calls from old friends went unanswered. I felt the walls closing. By evening, I couldn't stay inside. The lawsuit press release said I had to vacate by dawn tomorrow or face arrest for trespass. I grabbed the will envelope and the notebook, slipped out the back door. The wind was sharp, sea crashing loud. I headed to the lighthouse cellar again. The deposit box was still there, but I needed to see the will one more time. Confirm the clause. Plan my move. The iron door creaked open. I went down the stone steps with my flashlight, heart pounding. The cellar was cold, damp. I knelt by the box, spun the combination, 1978, and pulled it open. The envelope was gone, the smaller box too, empty. My breath stopped. Someone had been here after us. Footsteps echoed on the stairs. I spun around. Alara stood at the bottom, holding a flashlight, her face lit from below like a ghost. She smiled slow. "Looking for something?" I stood up fast. "How did you—" She walked closer. "You think you're clever, sneaking around. We knew you found the box last night." Mr. Hargrove told us everything. The lawyer. He had betrayed us. Told them the location, the combination. No, I hadn't shared that. But he must have known about the deposit box from Genevieve's papers. He filed the fake will. Helped them all along. "You stole it," I said. Alara laughed softly. "The real will, gone, destroyed. Now you have nothing. The lawsuit stands. You abused Mother, neglected her. The court will side with family." I backed against the wall. "The public clause." "What clause?" she sneered. "The only will is the one we read. You get 10,000. We get the rest, and you leave now." She held up a lighter. Flames flickered. In her other hand, ashes from the envelope. Burned. Gone. "Did you think you won?" Alara sneered. "You might have the money, but never the dignity." Lyra is shocked. Someone is making a sudden reversal. Genevieve's lawyer has betrayed them, and I realize it. I stood motionless in the cold cellar, staring at the ashes in Alara's hands. I rose, my eyes filled with determination, and I was about to do something nobody expected. Publicly announce the will, but refuse to accept. The inheritance. Alara's laugh echoed off the stone walls. "It's over, Lyra. Mr. Hargrove told us everything. He saw the deposit box mentioned in old files. He gave us the location. We came last night. Burned it all. No proof left. The lawsuit stands. You leave tomorrow." She turned and climbed the stairs, her footsteps fading. The iron door slammed shut above. I was alone in the dark. My legs gave out. I sank to the damp floor, back against the empty deposit box. Everything collapsed inside me. The clues, the hunt, the nights Orion and I spent searching. All for nothing. The real will gone, burned. Mr. Hargrove, the man who had sat at Genevieve's bedside, who had promised to honor her wishes, he had betrayed us, helped them destroy it. Tears came hot and fast. I didn't try to stop them. The lawsuit headlines flashed in my mind. Abuse, neglect, greedy daughter-in-law. People believed it. Friends had stopped calling. The staff had left. Ethan looked at me like a stranger. Even Orion had started to doubt when the news hit. I pressed my hands to the cold stone. All those years caring for Genevieve, holding her hand through pain, reading to her, keeping her paintings safe, and now this, accused, hated, about to be thrown out of the only home I had known for decades. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes, hours. The sea roared outside, wind howling through cracks. I felt empty, broken, like everything I had fought for was ash, just like the will. Then something caught my eye. A small corner of paper stuck under the deposit box lid. Alara had missed it in the dark. I pulled it out with shaking fingers. It was the last page of the will, the clause page, torn but intact, the public clause. In Genevieve's clear words, should any dispute arise regarding this will, the entirety of the Lighthouse Manor estate, including all artworks and lands, shall transfer irrevocably to a public art preservation fund, to be maintained as a museum open to all. I read it again, and again. The words sank in. Genevieve didn't want me to own it. She wanted me to protect it from greed, from family fights, from being sold off. She knew Ethan and Alara would challenge anything that didn't give them money. She built in this clause so no one could keep it private. It would belong to everyone, forever. The tears stopped. I sat up straighter. The betrayal still hurt. The lawyer, Ethan, Alara, the burned will, the lies in the press, but this page, this one page, was still here. Notarized. Signed, enough to trigger the clause. I folded it carefully and slipped it into my pocket. The weight lifted just a little. I wasn't fighting for money anymore, or even for myself. I was fighting for Genevieve's true wish. I stood up slowly. My legs were stiff but steady. I wiped my face with my sleeve. The cellar felt less cold now. I stood up, my gaze resolute. I was about to do something nobody expected, publicly declare my will but refuse to accept the inheritance. The final piece would appear at the wrong time when the unworthy person wouldn't see it. I was about to receive a confirmation call from a major art foundation. I climbed the lighthouse stairs slowly, the torn will page clutched in my hand. The wind howled outside, but inside I felt clear. Genevieve hadn't wanted me to own it. She wanted me to protect it. From family greed, from being sold off. The public clause was her way to make sure. I would announce the real will, prove it existed, and then refuse the inheritance. Let the estate go to the fund, turn it into a museum. No one would profit privately. Not me. Not Ethan, not Alara. Back at the manor, the house was quiet. Ethan and Alara were in the living room, watching television, acting like they had already won. Orion waited in the kitchen. I showed him the page. "This is enough," I said. "It's signed, notarized. We call a family meeting, invite Mr. Hargrove. I'll announce it publicly, online, news, everything. Then I refuse it all." Orion's eyes widened. "You're giving it up. For the art, for her legacy. It becomes public. A museum. No one can sell it." He hugged me quick. "Okay, let's do it." First, I needed a neutral witness. Someone to verify the clause. Not Hargrove, he had betrayed us. I needed an expert, a major art foundation, the Coastal Heritage Foundation. They had worked with Genevieve before, appraised her collection. They could testify the clause was real and binding. I went to my room and pulled up their number on my phone. It was late, but I dialed anyway. The line rang twice. "Coastal Heritage Foundation, this is Maria speaking." Maria, this is Lyra from the Lighthouse Manor, Genevieve's daughter-in-law. I need urgent help. I explained quickly, the fake will, the lawsuit, the real one burned, but the clause page safe. I need someone to witness and confirm publicly, tomorrow morning. Maria paused. We love Genevieve. She donated to us for years. I'll call our director. He'll come personally, but we need to agree officially. Let me put you on hold. I paced the room. The clock ticked. Downstairs, Ethan laughed at the TV. They thought I was packing to leave. Maria came back. The director is on his way. He'll be there by 9. But we have to sign an agreement first. The foundation will take over if the clause activates. No personal claims. That's perfect, I said. I'll refuse it all. We'll prepare the papers. See you tomorrow. I hung up, heart steady. The plan was set. Family meeting at 10. Hargrove invited. Press alerted anonymously. I would read the clause, refuse the money, and watch their faces fall. Orion knocked. Ready? I nodded. Almost. We went downstairs together. Ethan and Alara looked up from the couch. Family meeting tomorrow, I said calmly. 10 o'clock. Hargrove's coming. Ethan smirked. To evict you? Alara laughed. Pack your bags tonight. I smiled back. You'll see. I walked out to the terrace, phone in hand. The sea was dark, waves crashing. I texted the local news. Big announcement at Lighthouse Manor tomorrow. Estate will. Don't miss it. The plan was ready. Counterattack launched. The final piece will appear right when the wrong person sees it. I'm about to receive the confirmation call from the Major Art Foundation. Morning came bright and cold. Sunlight poured through the drawing room windows, making the sea sparkle outside. I had set the long table with coffee and notepads, like it was just another family meeting. Orion stood by the door, ready to let people in. Reporters waited on the terrace. I had invited 2 local ones and 1 national art journalist. Mr. Hargrove arrived first, briefcase in hand, face tight. Ethan and Alara followed him in, smug, thinking this was my surrender. The Coastal Heritage Foundation director, Dr. Reyes, arrived last with Maria. They carried official folders. Ethan frowned when he saw them. Alara shifted in her chair. I stood at the head of the table. The torn clause page lay in front of me, protected in a clear sleeve. Everyone sat. Cameras from the reporters rolled quietly in the corner. Thank you for coming, I began, voice steady. We are here because Genevieve's true wishes have been hidden. A forged will was read. A lawsuit was filed to silence me. Papers were burned to destroy proof. Mr. Hargrove cleared his throat. Lyra, this is dramatic. The court... I held up the clause page. This survived. The final page of Genevieve's official will. Notarized. Signed. It states that if any dispute arises, the entire estate, manor, land, art collection must transfer to a public art preservation fund. No private ownership. Silence. Ethan's face went pale. Alara stared at the page. I continued. I was named heir in the full document. But last night, that document was stolen and burned, on advice from Mr. Hargrove. Hargrove stood. That's an accusation. Dr. Reyes raised a hand. We have examined the page. The signature matches Genevieve's known will from 6 months ago. The clause is binding. The foundation is prepared to accept transfer immediately. I looked at Ethan and Alara. I relinquish all personal claim. I refuse the inheritance. The Lighthouse Manor becomes the Genevieve Museum, the House of Light, open to the public. Art preserved forever, as she wanted. Ethan slammed the table. You can't. It's done, Dr. Reyes said calmly. Papers were signed right there, transfer documents. My appointment as director of the fund. Ethan and Alara lost everything. No money, no house, no collection to sell. They sat stunned, faces red as reporters scribbled. Hargrove gathered his briefcase and left without a word, the betrayal complete. Months later, on a perfect spring day with the sky clear and blue, the Genevieve Museum finally opened its doors to the public. Crowds gathered across the manicured grounds, families and art lovers walking the paths Genevieve had once strolled herself. The manor looked alive again, windows shining, flowers blooming along the cliff edge. Inside, every painting hung exactly as she had left them, colors bright under soft lights, telling her stories to new eyes. The unfinished sunset painting now had a beautiful frame and a simple plaque beneath it that read, "Light meets shadow, truth endures." Orion and I slipped away from the guests just before the ribbon-cutting ceremony. We climbed the narrow spiral stairs of the lighthouse tower one last time, the wind growing stronger with every step. When we reached the balcony, the sea stretched out endless below us, waves sparkling in the sunlight. Down on the lawn, visitors gathered near the entrance, children running ahead, everyone waiting for the official moment. I rested my hands on the railing and looked at my son. His hair whipped in the breeze, and he smiled the way he used to when he was little and proud of something we built together. "She protected it through us," I said quietly, my voice almost carried away by the wind. Orion turned to me, eyes steady, "And we protected her." We stood side by side on the lighthouse balcony, shoulder to shoulder, watching workers raise the new sign at the gate. The letters gleamed gold against the white manor wall. Genevieve Museum, House of Light. The old beam swept across the water, one slow turn, steady and true, guiding everyone home just as it always had. My dear friend, did you feel this story in your heart the way I did while telling it? Did it touch? Something deep, something about family, sacrifice, and the quiet strength we carry inside. Tell me, where are you watching from tonight? What city? What corner of the world? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and it means everything to know you're there with me. If this story moved you, if it gave you even a little comfort or hope, please show your support with a super thanks. It helps me keep sharing these real-life journeys that remind us goodness and justice still win in the end. Your kindness keeps these stories alive. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying until the last word. You are the reason I tell them. On screen right now, you'll see 2 new stories I truly believe you'll love. Just as emotional, just as true. And if you haven't already, please subscribe so we never lose each other. There are so many more waiting for you. I'll be here, waiting for your thoughts in the comments. Until the next story, with all my love and respect.